So with the news surrounding the Switch 2 and Legend ZA, and since I am very excited about the announcement of Legend ZA, we're going to put this in perspective for how long this project has been in development. I want to go over what was been announced since the time I've been writing this script and recording this footage. We've seen the starters revealed, the premise, the megas of Dragonite, Victory Bell, Halucha, and now Malamar. Hopefully seeing all these announcements lit the fire underneath my ass to write the script for this Pokemon X and Y retrospective. And if this is out before the release of Pokemon Legends ZA, I will be amazed. I'm just going to be quite honest with you. Since I have started my new job and went back to school and got sick for a week, so I wanted to go and reminisce about another childhood game of mine, Pokemon X and Y versions. I still think it's incredibly weird that these games just never got a third version, which is probably why I've titled this video The Potential Generation. So let's talk about it. So I still wonder what that version could look like, what a Pokemon Z would look like. But something you guys may not know is that I like to open games that I am very familiar with a story that's related to them when they are coming out or when I first bought the game. Don't worry, I won't always have a story related to a game from my childhood. Maybe. I don't know, man. I just like to yap about my experiences. And I got experiences I like to talk about for a lot of the media I plan to cover, by the way, for most stages of my life. So hope you like them. But anyways, back when I was a little baby boy, right at the young age of 15 years old, I was sitting in music class, a part of my school's rock band. And instead of practicing the keyboard like I should have been, I was watching the first ever reveal trailer for the first 3D mainline Pokemon game to be developed by Game Freak. It was a magical period because before Gen 6, I took a several year hiatus from Pokemon after being so disappointed by Gen 4 to the point I didn't play the games for years. That was until my interest was suddenly renewed by Pokemon Black and then its immediate, at least for me, sequel at the time, Black 2. So needless to say, I was back to liking the first ever RPG games that I played growing up. By the way, fuck you, Eric, for changing your taste and not getting me my trade evolutions. So in relation to this news, I went and worked for my dad in his soccer league to save up money for a 3DS so I could play the newest entries. Only to be surprised with one on my birthday, along with Ocarina of Time 3D and Fire Emblem Awakening by my parents. Again, bless them so much, despite not knowing the differences between most games. They somehow always got what I wanted, and I love them for that. Oh, anyways, with a lot of leftover pocket change from my teenage work, I just went ahead and got Pokemon Y as soon as it came out. And let me tell you, my journey was the shit with this game. We developed a battle club, well, sort of. It was pretty much just me and my boys doing dumb shit to each other. Like one of us rolling up with the Rattata Endeavor strat and not wanting to face it. I knew what they were on about and immediately rolled up on them with Mega Kangaskhan just to deny him a victory. Petty, I know, but to me that was funny as hell. And to be fair, shouldn't have advertised your strat so hard. I also even got to battle a teacher while ditching one of my classes. Got my 3DS UH because I was battling my friend Mason mid-class. Had to get it back because I think my parents would have verbally whooped my ass if they had to go into high school to get my 3DS back. So I sincerely apologized to spare my own hide. Then I went home and tried to pretend that I did not get my 3DS taken away when I was 16 years old in a high school class. This game is so nuts to me, even though the post-game was lackluster compared to what I played before, except for Pearl's post-game. That is somehow even more lackluster. I found the game to be one of my favorite memories in my high school years at my old high school before I transferred to a different school. It was also good enough that it was probably one of my favorite titles. Also, such a good and memorable time that it was my most played game on the 3DS that not even other Pokemon entries like Moon, Ultra Moon, or Alpha Sapphire could compare to. Like, they couldn't even get close to the hundreds of hours I put into Pokemon X and Y because of how much I met up with my friends just to battle or trade. And then there's all the people I got to meet through this game. I even got to take part in a very obscure Twitter gym league where I was both the first gym leader and the Steel type leader. I even got to meet some friends through it that even though I haven't talked to them in years, I still think about them from time to time and care for them very much. And I will never forget all the times we battled or traded together. All I have to say to those who may know me from those days, Pichu and Smash Ultimate is glad to have that self-destructive doofus back. It's your typical Pokemon story for the most part, so I am going to skip over a lot of the more random stuff in the gym challenges, as the gym leaders don't really interact as much as some do in a few select games. So you come of age and a professor seeks you out on a journey to fulfill one of their research goals. In this case, Professor Sycamore is trying to learn about Mega Evolution, and on the way, you challenge gyms as a boss to show off your team's growth. You know, the same song and dance. So I'm going to tell you about the stuff that actually differentiates this game from the other Pokemon games. You were asked to understand the phenomenon of Mega Evolution, making the journey from Vanderville Town, which you have just moved into this new town. You meet some of the new friends. Most of them Java Lords I do not like. Only half of them might have substance to them. The other two don't really care. Why are they here? I generally do not think that these two add anything to the story. Big words from what I'm about to say about a game series where having a good story is optional, but I'll add as well, when the game stories hit, they can hit. Anyways, the player and their friends travel to Awkward Town, to which they learn about Professor Sycamore has asked them to do, and has offered 3 stars to get us started on our journey. We have this grass-type hedgehog, Chespin, this fire-type fox, Finnegan, and my goat, Froakie, the water-type frog. By God, Froakie is the coolest water starter of all time. I'm so sorry, Toadon, my son. I'll never forget how cool you were in my first start. Then, of course, you go on a journey, take on a gym, get another starter Pokemon, this time from Kanto, get a guy's flute back to wake up a Snorlax blocking the way, you know, like very, very red and blue-esque. We love our Kanto callbacks, apparently. Take on another gym until you encounter these very dapper fashion lads called Team Flare. I'll come back to them once it's time to talk about their true purpose or whenever they appear in the story again. But let's just say they kind of start out like Team Rocket at first, just a normal criminal organization, until they tell you what they're really up to. After conquering a total of 2 gyms, we finally make it to Shalor City to learn about Mega Evolution from the Mega Evolution guru, Gherkin, and his granddaughter, Karina, in the Tower of Mastery. But there's a catch. They only have 1 Mega Evolution Stone that you totally found by yourself, and only one of you can get the Mega Evolution Keystone. The other 3 friends withdraw from the offer except for your rival, who is either Serena or Callum, depending on the gender of the player character. After you claim your victory over them, you claim the Mega Evolution Stone, and you have to take on Karina at her gym, who will test you to see if you're worthy of Mega Evolution. Once you prove your worth, she asks you to climb to the top of the Tower of Mastery, to which you are immediately offered a Lucario who wants to go on a journey with you, which is a nice way to guarantee that the player can take advantage of this new and cool gimmick. After defeating Karina in this impromptu Mega Evolution tutorial, we go on our way traveling through Kalos, getting a few more gym badges, then we come across a power plant in the desert under attack by Team Flare, who are siphoning the plant's power to obtain more power for their current unknown machinations. Unable to pursue them even further, we travel into the desert, stumbling upon a gigantic mystery man, mumbling about a flower Pokemon given eternal life. The strange man leaves, to which we once again resume our travels and gain more gym badges. We take a break from our journey to spend more time with our friends when they invite us to a tour to the Pokeball factory, when we go inside to find out that the fashion fascists once again are up to their antics. This time, stealing Pokeballs from the factory, trying to convince the factory's president to join Team Flare with an outrageous offer. These guys are trying to fleece all of us, good lord. Our rival joins us at the last moment to help defeat the scientists of Team Flare, and due to our bravery, the president offers us a Master Ball and a Big Nugget. Depending on what you choose, you get both. Of course, they wouldn't let you pass up the Master Ball. It's a trademark of the series. But at least you get a little richer while you're at it too. Probably gonna spend on a bit of clothing. After putting a stop to them again in Lavar City's Pokeball Factory, we arrive in Dendamel Town, where Sycamore and his aides discuss the legends of Xerneas or Yveltal. Depending on our version of the game, we either learn about a Pokemon that spreads life and revitalization, or one that spreads death and decay. We go back onto our journey with new info. Stephen Obama Snow at the request of its friend Mamoswine from Team Flare again, who we used to go to Anastar City, to which we claimed the gym badge there. Then a holocast plays before us. Lysander announces that he's going to fire a legendary weapon of Eld, so we march down to the cafe to learn where Lysander Labs is, and to take the weapon down. We defeat the workers to spill the beans on how to get into the lab, battling and taking down every Team Flare grunt and scientist and some admins and head scientists along the way. We also learned that Team Flare has captured that giant man. His name is AZ, because he had the key to activate the ultimate weapon around his neck. He reveals to us that he is the king who built the weapon because he wanted to revive his Floette that had died within the war 3,000 years ago. He used it to end the war by killing every Pokemon that was participating in it. This upsets Floette, and it leaves AZ, who is now cursed with immortality, forced to walk the earth alone. Lysander then promises to turn off the weapon if we can defeat Xerosic, who then turns on the weapon remotely no matter what button we press after we defeat him, causing it to burst from the earth in Geosinge Town. Seeing no choice, we go to the direct source of the weapon to storm the true base of Team Flare under Geosinge Town. Once we enter the base, this is where we learn about the true goal of Team Flare. And I'm not going to sugarcoat it with you. It's genocide, straight up. They want to kill the rest of the world. Everybody dies. And Team Flares are the only one who gets to live in a world inhabited only by them. That is the goal of Team Flare, and they plan to accomplish it by firing an ancient weapon that will wipe out the rest of the world. And to a degree, it is pretty much a cult, with how members have to pay a premium to join this group and not perish along with the rest of the world. It's most certainly a more mature tone for a Pokemon game. But this isn't the first time, surprisingly. I'll elaborate more on this thought near the end of the video. The only thing is that the box art legend is what is powering this weapon, and we have to aim to capture the living batteries to stop the world-killing gun. And with no battery to power the weapon, Team Flare's very own leader, Lysander, steps forth to stop you, revealing in his ridiculous getup that he too, like us, can Mega Evolve his Pokemon. Choosing Gyarados, he makes that his signature Mega Evolution. And depending on the game's version, he will fire the weapon to curse us, and once that is over, we leave their secret base in a panic to escape the collapsing base as the weapon fires its very last shot, triumphing over the defeat of Team Flare. We are thanked by AZ for stopping his mistake from being fired once more, and we continue our journey to conquer the last gym. After we track him down in these winding woods and tell him to go back to his job amidst all these foster Pokemon who live in the sanctuary after being mistreated by humans. More on this in the post-game. But once we do go back and inevitably beat him and claim our 8th and final gym badge, we make our way to the Elite Four, conquering the last hurdle before us, Victory Road. Amidst these trials is our last encounter in the main story quest with Serena or Callum, or to better yet simplify, our rival, who expresses remorse for the fashion fascists. All I'm going to say is don't do that. They actively want to kill every last one of us. Come on now. After we win, there's only one last hurdle left in our path to become the champion, the Elite Four. Each chamber housing a trainer who is the best of the best, specializing in a single type testing to see if we are ready to take on the champion Diantha within her stunning arena. We take on each Pokemon of hers one by one until our ace Gardevoir, who Mega Evolves into Mega Gardevoir, steps forth to issue the ultimate test to take on a powerful Mega Evolved Pokemon, and through blood, sweat, and tears, we finally win. We are the new champion and return to Lumio City to celebrate our crowning achievements. We stopped Team Flare, we became the champion, and we captured the legendary Pokemon and made them into our faithful ally. Only one last person challenges us, and it's AZ. Inspired by our efforts, he battles us knowing he might very well lose. But he does it to understand what it's like to be a trainer. Despite his loss, he realizes what he's missing, and soon, his Floette comes back to him after 3,000 years. Tears begin to flow, and this chapter the story ends. The postgame is small. It features a very neat side story about the Looker, an international police agent looking to clean up the rest of Team Player after the character has defeated most of them. Well, let's slow down a bit before we get to that. After the credits roll, we open up to our room where our adventure had begun, only to go downstairs to find out that Professor Sycamore wishes to meet us at Lumio Station, from where multiple paths open up, including those that lead to legendary Pokemon. Let's start simple and talk about our friend Shauna, who wishes to give us a starter Pokemon she received from the daycare. It depends on your starter, but to simplify, it's the 1 week to your starter in exchange for a Pokemon of your choice. I gave her Xerneas because I honestly do not need another one inside of my Pokemon home, nor do I want to go through the effort to transport the Pokemon bank and then to home. And also, it's funny. But most importantly, it's a bit tedious and I just don't feel like it at the moment. Speaking of legendary Pokemon, you can either do the very annoying task of hunting down the legendary Kanto bird that corresponds with your starter. I'll put a little graphic up on the screen and so you can figure out which one goes to what. Or you can just go after Zygarde in Terminus Cave or Mewtwo in the unknown dungeon within the Pokemon Village, which thematically makes sense for Mewtwo considering its origins. Capturing it gives you its Mega Stones, which depend on what version you are playing. Oh, and there's some battle restaurants in the Battle Villa. Those are for grinding for competitive Pokemon stuff or power leveling your Pokemon. You can also battle your rival daily where they gain the ability to Mega Evolve Absol to just give it a little bit more of a challenge. Oh, and neat little factoid. You can talk to Diantha in Cafe Soleil for a Ralts that comes bundled with Gardevoir. You have to trade a Pokemon for it, and I mean literally any. Now for the real meat and potatoes, in the story that serves as an epilogue to our main story, a 5-chapter story known as the Looker Bureau. The Looker Bureau begins with us entering Lumio City, asking you to meet in Rouge Plaza. Once you enter the bureau, you'll find a detective inside who wants you to be his assistant after your conflicts with Team Blair. We agree, and he sends us on our first assignment to test the search Lumio's for 5 special tickets. These tickets are represented by these sparkles on the ground, but these are relatively easy spots to find, so I'll just skip past this step. Also, it's fun to explore the city for a scavenger hunt, so I'm not going to take that away. First mission is as easy as that, and with all the tickets, he will ask you to be his crime-fighting partner. In Chapter 2, parents of Lumio City are a little concerned after a bunch of kids start to play in back alleys rather than attending school. So we are asked to check it out, and when we do, a bunch of kids challenge us to a series of battles, to which at the end of the alleyway, we find the cause of why these kids are ditching school to play with a very curious girl who has no home and lives on the streets of Lumio City, Emma and her esper Mimi. However, Mimi only really likes Emma, so after seeing us in Looker, it flees, and we have to track it down within the alleyway and dance for it to show that we are a trusted friend. With Emma and Mimi back at the bureau, Looker extends a helping hand to this young girl and offers her and Mimi a home within the bureau. In Chapter 3, we run into a bit of a language barrier as a tourist runs into the bureau speaking Japanese. And before you can ask, in non-English versions of the game, she does in fact speak English instead. So basically, she asks us in our native language help on finding her Pokemon. Looker tries to understand her, but fails, only for the tourist to berate him in her language. But Emma, on the other hand, can speak the language and defends Looker, telling the tourist not to disrespect him in exchange for our help. Emma uses Mimi's telepathy to translate what the tourist is saying to us. We learn that a gang is stealing Pokemon and is hiding at the train station in North Boulevard. Looker tasks us to hunt them down and defeat the gang so they will return people's Pokemon. After we challenge all 3 gang members to a battle, they still refuse to give up the Pokemon. That is, until Emma shows up and the gang regards her as their leader. Because in the past, she beat all 3 of them in a fight, but she disavows them, tells them to apologize to the tourists and return her Pokemon, to which they do because of their respect to Emma. With the case settled, Looker declares he has to go undercover, and due to Emma's growing worries, she feels that she and Mimi have become a financial burden upon Looker, so she has to go look for part-time work in the city to support Looker and show her gratitude to the man that took her in by working in a local cafe that was hiring for new staff members. In Chapter 4, it's revealed through a holo news broadcast that a historical painting was vandalized overnight. But during this investigation, we learn that someone is going around battling strangers, beating them just to steal their Pokemon after they win the battle, fleeing immediately afterwards. Looker, seeing a perfect opportunity, comes up with a task of setting up a sting operation to apprehend the criminal and bring them to justice. But of course, it's not that simple. As we fight the suspicious battler in the alley and defeat them, they revert into a strange robot-like entity, and before they can be apprehended, they make a magnificent leap and escape the claws of justice. We chase the robotic entity 2 more times, and on our 3rd attempt, Mimi arrives and starts to act friendly towards the strange robot. And there's only one person that Mimi displays this level of affection towards, and it's Emma. The robotic entity is revealed in this instance as the Looker's surrogate daughter. With no response other than violence, Emma kicks Mimi away and punches Looker in the stomach. Emma flees, and we return to HQ to talk about the results of this mission, and Looker claims to go to the hospital to treat his injury, not telling us or Emma his true purpose in going dark on this mission. In Chapter 5, we return to the Bureau to find all of that out. The player character, not us. Emma tells us that someone wishes to meet us at Hotel Richesime in North Boulevard. It's here where the mystery informant challenges to a battle to see if we are the one for the job. Then reveals who he's working for. The Hollow newscaster and Elite Four member, Malva, reveals herself, telling us that she has a message for us and Looker. We beat her and win the right to this information and are informed that the man we are looking for, the Looker came to arrest, is named Xerosic, the very one from the main story that activated the weapon. It can be found underneath Lysander Labs, where we were earlier in the story. We know where we tried to stop Team Player from activating the weapon, where AZ was held prisoner. But that's not all. We are alerted that there is a secret level to the lab deeper within that houses an identical layout to the floor above. This is where Xerosic and his staff reside. We go in and, to our surprise, fight scientists and Emma's old gang who are working here part-time. An odd way to go clean, but, give them some credit. They took responsibility and just wanted to work alongside their friend. We navigate the maze to the final room where the guard in front just led us through to look around inside the room where we see Pokeballs, presumably from the people that were robbed by Emma in her suit. There are 6 notes that explain how the suit works, telling us that the suit essentially operates on its own while Emma sleeps inside, unaware of what her body does outside of her dreams, while enhancing the user to peak physical condition. Once we talk to the guard again, Xerosic comes in. Instead of challenging himself, he saves Emma, now dubbed as Essentia, while in her suit to battle us 4 times with several different Pokemon. With enough strain on the suit, Xero sees the results of his efforts and deactivates the suit, freeing and awakening Emma, who goes back home since her duty is over for today. He turns himself in and allowing Looker to arrest him. With the case closed, we return to the Bureau where we find Emma with a new note. The note informs Emma that the building they reside in is paid for in full. She may continue to call it home and do with it as she pleases, and we receive his codename, Looker. Looker reveals to Emma that he's part of the International Police Force and is leaving the city. Upset, Emma rushes off to look for Looker. We check the museum, finding a restored painting, where we are told here that Looker is going to Lysander Cafe, who is with Xerosic, after demanding that Xerosic returns every last stolen Pokemon. We and Emma step in to confront Looker, who, despite his attachment to Emma, informs them that the two are leaving, and Xerosic, with a change of heart, leaves Emma with the Essentia suit and the Pokemon he loaned her, allowing her to keep both. Emma, now with both of her gifts, vows to keep Lumio City safe under the identity of Essentia, allowing us to have a rematch with her on every Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, basically every other day of the week. She remains in her default look and talks about her duties as the new head of the Looker Bureau, continuing the look's cover work in Lumio City as the new resident detective. It's the typical turn-based RPG you expect from Pokemon most of the time. A 1v1 turn-based battle, sometimes a 2v2, although this is very rare. But in X and Y, we are also introduced to new battle formats like the incredibly mid Sky battles. I see no point to these. These are very awful. I don't like them. They're just single battles, but only flying and levitating Pokemon can take part in. It's just kind of boring. and the oddly satisfying but frustrating horde battles that require you to knock out all but one Pokemon to catch only one of them, which I had to ask, why can't I just aim the Pokeball and catch the one I want? And then there's the start of the generational battle mechanic tradition that at the time of writing this has gone all the way to Generation 9. The gimmick of this generation was Mega Evolution, a powerful mechanic that can only be done once per battle and once per Pokemon, which would do some of the following, or all: increase stats, change abilities, change types. Although the one stat that wouldn't change immediately was speed, it would use the prior speed stat before using the new speed stat, leading to some megas being faster or slower for one turn depending on the Pokemon. To do this, you had to find the Megastone from the eligible Pokemon. I am about to show you on screen, although I will warn you, some Mega Evolutions are not available immediately, as besides your Kanto Starter's Mega Evolution Stone, and these select few Pokemon other Mega Stones can be found once you powered up your Mega Keystone Ring in Killout City. After you beat the Pokemon League, fight your rival again here, and do a single battle Mason fight, and then you unlock the ability to find more Mega Keystones. But only during the mystical times of 8 p.m. and 9 p.m. or between the hours of 2000 or 2100 if you use military time. I also did not include a specific time zone because it depends on what time it is on your 3DS clock, which means you can manipulate time and force these stones to appear. I advise you do all this at once through this method. Also, this is weird for a kid's game. Most kids, when I was going to school, went to bed around 10 or 9 p.m. because we usually had to wake up around 6 a.m. to get ready for school. Not me, though. I stayed up watching mid. And then I went for sleep part 2 and slept through first period classes or the free periods. But also, I don't know if it's the same these days. I am neither a parent or some kid at school. More or less some random almost 30-year-old man who still plays Pokemon and other RPGs. We also have a few Pokedex changes because of the game now featuring a lot of Pokemon. There are now 3 different Pokedexes, each for a different part of the Kalos region, which makes sense since the game features over 457 unique catchable Pokemon in the Kalos region Pokedex, with only 72 new Pokemon, which is the lowest new Pokemon introduced at the time, outside of a Legends game, which is kind of odd, but I can probably narrow it down to making 3D models for 720 unique Pokemon, which it does not take an expert to say this is a ginormous amount of effort. Which, damn, I'd start implementing less Pokemon as the series goes on if I was a creative lead at Game Freak. Which you got to remember, there are now 1,025 unique Pokemon. This is excluding regional forms found in future games. I also think this is the last game to feature a national Pokedex, a feature that would be cut from the series starting from Sun and Moon. Another thing that the series introduces is the Pokemon and Me, where you basically play Nintendogs with your Pokemon. We also have Super Training. This was actually for raising EVs, which stands for external values. Basically, you can put 520 points into your Pokemon's 6 stats to make them better in some way. It's basically competitive BS that you don't have to do when you're just going through the game. Also, some Pokemon naturally give EVs when defeated, which is how people found out that certain types of horde battles were better than doing Super Training back in the day. We also have, for the first time in the series, omnidirectional and free movement, allowing us to walk, or in most cases, roller skate in 8 different directions. And as an added feature of roller skates, we have rail grinding, which is super underutilized in my opinion. You can also do spins. A slow skate is weird to think that this would replace the traditional bike, but no, that's in the game too. And as usual, free to the player, there's also the introduction of a series first feature, Ride Pokemon, where you would use Pokemon in the overworld outside of Surf to cross difficult terrain. And lastly, one of the newest features in this entry was the introduction of fairy types. For this first time since Generation 2 introduced the Dark and Steel type, they introduced a brand new type that was at the time a 14-year gap that was thought to never going to occur again. We see its intended purpose being displayed immediately when it was revealed to be a dragon type counter, being completely immune to dragon types and built specifically to throw Pokemon like Hydreigon right into the dumpster of that 4 times weakness Moonblast. To account for the fairy type, some Pokemon were reevaluated in accordance to this, having the Gardevoir and Azumarill evolution lines gained the fairy type, while some Pokemon like the Clefable and even Granbull evolutions became pure fairy types. There's actually so much to talk about when it comes to this soundtrack, so I guess I can just focus on what I know. First things first is that the music from X and Y is actually featured on a really large special album called the Pokemon X and Pokemon Y Super Music Collection. The collection, however, as far as they could tell, is exclusive to Japan physically, but is available nationwide on the iTunes Store. Damn, no Spotify. Physical owners could proudly claim the album's exclusive artworks here, but that's not all, as some of the game's songs were remixed for Super Smash Bros. On the Wii U and 3DS, which featured remixes for the train theme, which has been turned into a killer orchestral rock remix, the Team Flare theme, which is techno-inspired with electric guitar riffs with an orchestra and choir, and with some music that was taken directly from the game, such as the Wild Battle theme, Lumio City, Victory Road, and lastly the Champions theme. There are some good remixes. I highly recommend checking out the Smash versions. They are usually very good. But as for the entire soundtrack, here's some of my favorite tracks from the game before we move on to our next topic. Please take a listen. Since transitioning to full 3D gameplay for the 3DS platform, the series has taken on a more three-dimensional look, moving on from the 2D sprites and going with the detailed models that we see before us for both the overworld and the Pokemon models. A first for the series. A first for the mainline series, which was not the norm outside of the console spin-off series such as the Stadium and the Aura Region games. It isn't fully 3D yet, as we still see drawn artworks or sprites from most of the NPC trainers, unless they are super important to the story or reoccur a lot throughout the main story. And as always on this channel, I like to shout out the artists who worked on these projects, like Ken Sugimura, who does the art for the games, but that's usually the humans and a good bit of the mons, and he is the game's key art director. Then we have Takao Uno, who served as the 3D art director for the games, thanks to the 3D modeling. Then we have Yusuke Omura, who assisted the team with designing, but unlike comic books and superheroes, it's a lot harder for me to find out who drew and what in these games, like most of the time, but I will leave a little hint. Not every Pokemon is designed by the same person. If you can figure out who designed what, share with me in the comments below, and maybe that person may have designed a Pokemon or character I really like. But also, for those who may not know all about this stuff, I still want to engage with you. Comment down below your favorite Kalosian Pokemon. I am very curious. Mine is a tie between Froakie and Hawlucha. I don't think I can reasonably choose between the two, if I can be honest with you guys. I think this segment of the video is probably where I can go over the player character model. I think that is a form of art, yeah. So this is the first game to introduce the player character as a customizable entity from the moment you boot up past the start of the game. Now, outside of selecting your character's gender, you can now select your character's skin color for the first time in the series history. But not only that, but we can also change our character's hair, our outfits. You can change pretty much anything about your character's outfit. A sort of limited amount compared to what we see in later games like Sword and Shield, which at the moment of writing is our current peak of fashion. I reserve the judgment for now, as Legend Z8 looks as if it has the potential to dethrone Sword and Shield as the icon of fashion of the series. But anyways, let's talk about where it all began. What if I told you that most games you could see what your haircut was going to be before you got your haircut? Yeah, that's right. You either have to guess how your character's haircut will go, or refer to a guide online like I did. Also, good luck if you play a girl character. You have even more option than the boys. Enjoy the chart provided. Confusion aside, I figured this was a good moment to bring up the aesthetic of the player characters as a form of fashion and art. I feel, especially when it comes to fashion on a fictional character. And I suppose that would just be an indirect example of character design. Yeah, I'm pushing it, but I still think fashion is a form of art, even if it's fake. For example, games, characters like clothing. In fact, I think making your character look very cool or cute is a very talented art. I learned this from my friend Zelda, who has shown me the fashion of her characters. Like, she somehow makes her characters from World of Warcraft look good, and to me, that game looks very ugly. Sorry for the tangent, but I really like seeing custom characters. It's like an art form to me. Maybe I should find a way for people to send me their characters instead of just browsing around on social media and hoping I see someone that's very cool or adorable. So let's talk about version differences. All right, so the first immediate difference you'll spot between the two versions is the title screens, with Pokemon X featuring a Xerneas walking through the forest and an Yveltal soaring across the skies in Pokemon Y. And of course, then, just like the black and white, Game Freak expands some more on what if the antagonist was slightly altered differently in each game. Except this time, it's not just what type of legendary they plan to use to enact their plan, but this time, his final action towards the player. In Pokemon X, Lysander will fire the weapon anyways to force immortality on the player and their friends, but in Pokemon Y, Lysander will fire the weapon anyways, this time with the intent to kill everyone outside of the base no matter what. A hypothetical, I'm going to lose, no, we are going to lose kind of way. Speaking of the weapon, did you know it has a different centerpiece depending on what version you're playing? Here, look, I'm going to have Editor Me put up the version from X on the left and the version of Y on the right. Other differences are more minor and relate to Pokemon that inhabit the region of Kalos and what Mega Evolutions you receive in your game. In Pokemon X, you'll get Mega Charizard X and Mega Mewtwo X, which are both more physical oriented and a Fire Dragon type and a Psychic Fighting type, respectively. In Pokemon Y, these two types do not change and are more special attack oriented and are called Mega Charizard Y and Mega Mewtwo Y. There's also this list of compiled Pokemon that I've gathered here to tell you which Pokemon is exclusive to which game. I'll let you take a minute to pause the video here if you're interested. And then if you look again, I have compiled another list, but this time for Mega Evolutions that are exclusive to a game. Again, I'll allow you to pause for a better look before I resume. So my competitive history was, in retrospect, very shameful. I only did solo battles in the unofficial competitive format, which, looking back on it, was actually so damn lame. Not because the format is lame, but because I regret also not engaging with VGC's rules at the time, because as an adult I realized that I kind of always had more fun with double battles than I do singles. Which is probably why I like the Indigo disc from Scarlet and Violet in the GameCube Pokemon games, but anyways, back to my thoughts. Then you can only use legendaries in Ubers only in other tiers at the time. You didn't really get to use the legendaries at all, except for Regigigas and those other really ass legendaries. But I'm gonna look you straight in the eyes. What sick bastard would willingly use Regigigas outside of doubles pre-Generation 8? Well, compared to the end of Generations format, where they at most allow 2 legendaries to use, which I will be honest, Force Legendary Hate does suck kind of in retrospective, and I kind of wish I did use some legendaries in my playthroughs of Pokemon recently. But at the same time, I do recognize that spamming legendaries in a fight makes people give you a funny stare in mid-battle. But also, it's very funny when you think about it, and that feels very awful to do in my opinion, because from my experience, it was only teams full of legendaries by the way. Shout out to that probably grown-ass man in Hackmons who called me a, how shall we say, a slur for the mentally disabled, because I thought having a full team of Stantlers with legendary abilities and moves would be far funnier than just making Uber's Mark II. You sure showed me, old man. But at the same time, this generation is funny because you got these pair of boo-boo keys put the fear of status afflictions into every player around because of its ability prankster. And remember, if I ever talk about Sword and Shield, why this typing is in retrospective so damn evil? Well, I'll be honest as well, fairy types are kind of evil within their debut generation because of their weaknesses being basically just poison and steel types, which, let's be honest, not many people use poison and steel types. which, if you know, Pokemon of these types aren't very offensive, and they have some strong as hell tech moves like Moonblast and Play Rough. And in relevance to one of our box legendaries and first ever fairy type legendary, Xerneas itself, and boy did it leave a vastly more solid impression than its box art rival Yveltal. Like, when we compare the two, we are talking about Coffin Baby versus Sarbomb type shit. Xerneas just overshadows its counterparts that much in their debut game, especially with Zygarde, as you know, did not get to show off his true power as the Sun and Moon. I'll assume that is because the Pokemon Z game was canceled at some point. Just my little theory, but I also need to make a call-out post within my script. Why hasn't Freeze been reworked yet? We do not need 3 stun status effects. It is by all intents and purposes even more diabolical than Sleep. What I've talked about is not nearly enough to tell you everything you need to know about this game's competitive history. From what I told you here was basically from my very own experiences. If you actually want to know more about the competitive histories of this game's meta Pokemon, I'm sure that there are videos out there that will go further in depth than I ever could if I'm being honest with you. But I think this video is going on long enough, man. Let's just move on. Alright, time for one of my favorite parts of my videos is secrets and Easter eggs. So when you first start the game, our first Easter eggs are plain in sight with your character holding the Pikachu 3DS XL, and on the right is the Monster Hunter 3 Ultimate Machine. God, I miss Monster Hunter 3. Anyways, I like to reference a joke my friend said to me while writing this script. If I had a nickel for every time an electric gym was closed down due to a power outage, I would have 2, which is strange. I thought of this because, damn, that is weird that this happened twice in the series. Not a very obscure secret, I'm sure, but I'm pretty sure it's noteworthy to know that that Lumio City gym is closed down the same way as Surge's gym was closed down. I'm pretty sure. I am sure that you've all seen this one before, but when you get off this elevator here in this unmarked office building in Lumio City, go to the second floor and you can spot this Hex Maniac floating across the floor. Very likely a paranormal event. And do you remember Sycamore's message? You can find it right here in Curryway Town, ready for you to read its message and reflect on your journey. You can also obtain a strange souvenir from some hotels. There used to be a big debate on what this was, but it turns out it's actually from the Alola region, as this item later reappears in the Alola region as a souvenir in Mali City. Yeah, it was just a fun teaser for the literal next games. I really liked that. We, however, do not understand what Pokemon it is at the moment. At least I think so. So, a fun fact from when I mentioned that Super Smash Bros. Had remixed some of the tracks from X and Y, but we also have 3 additional featured appearances from the game when the Smash games were coming out for Wii U and 3DS. We had an announcement that Greninja himself was going to be playable and was going to be featured alongside 2 stages, Prism Tower from Lumio City and the Kalos Elite Four. Probably some of the best choices they could put in the Smash if I'm going to be honest, as both of these stages are just so gorgeous to look at. You can even see some Easter eggs from known Kalosian Pokemon such as Helioptile and the famed box art legendary Yveltal. Oh, and a few advertisements that can be seen around Kalos, such as Diantha's fashion advertisement. I think it's hard to tell the intent, but I also assume that she's both a fashion model and a movie star, so I don't necessarily count out anything. Could even be something completely unrelated, who knows? I must also bring up the reason why I speculate, as it has been established that do not use the same language as us, which is why only we, the player, can read the writings of the unknown. So just a neat little factoid for you listeners today. I also just bring this up so I can tell you that I do not know what these signs say, as I cannot read the in-universal language that the Pokemon world uses. The other stage is pretty cool. It's the Kalos Elite Four is featuring a lot of non-Kalos Pokemon while also replicating the themes found throughout the Elite Four's 4 typings. But also there's a 15% chance for the background Pokemon to be replaced by a set legendary matching the typing of the current chamber. These 4 legends are Manaphy, Ho-Oh, Registeel, and Rayquaza, allowing a technical 9 variations within the same stage outside of the battlefield and Omega variations that you can choose from stage select. I find this absolutely very cool, but at the same time, I know it's asking a lot. I kind of wish we got to see the Champions Chamber. I think they could have had Diantha's team as hazards, with her Mega Gardevoir being the rare hazard. I don't know. But I do appreciate what we got overall. But it could have been neat. Now let's talk about one of the biggest contributions to Smash presented by Kalos, Greninja. This was such a wild reveal to me growing up in high school. I had no idea he could just show up in Smash. And to me, it was so cool to see the game get its first playable Dark type. One of my favorite types, aside from the Steel type, which is my favorite one. I think they captured Greninja's essence very well. And it got a nice final Smash too, despite having a Mega Evolution. And before they suddenly announced Mega Greninja or put it in Legend ZA. Side tangent before I talk more about Smash Greninja, I am very surprised that the starters of X and Y did not have Mega Evolutions, or the fact that there was like one Mega Kalos Pokemon, and it was mythical. Like, what was the deal with that? Oh well, at least it's fixed now that we have Mega Hawlucha and Mega Malamar. Now, what a sick designs those are. Anyways, back to Smash Greninja. To me, Smash Greninja is very cool because it captures the spirit of the Pokemon well, as you have its signature move, Water Shuriken. It's a bit different compared to its game counterpart, which can be charged for a large shuriken or pressed for a fast projectile instead of hitting, 2 to 5 times, which I think works very well. For a side special, you got Shadow Sneak, which allows players to hold it down into a committed direction, teleporting over to the shadow on the floor. His recovery on the hand is interesting. It's called Hydro Pump, but it doesn't really look like Hydro Pump to me. You know what I'm saying? I may be crazy for nitpicking this, but it feels more like Aquagen, no? I mostly say this because of how Hydro Pump is depicted over the years prior to this depiction. His down special is Substitute, which is a unique counter that once hit, you can tilt the stick to have Greninja attack towards the directions you tilt the stick in. Essentially, I feel this could set up for combos. I am speculating purely because of the potential utility. I don't main Greninja despite my love for him. When I played, I was a psychopath who had played Terry Bogard online. Yeah, real smart of me with a game that's awful netcode, am I right? There's also a manga that adapts the events of these games, but usually they take on different aspects, given player characters actual names, although I'm not sure if you can call the letters X and Y actual names for a person, but I digress. I haven't read the manga since the first saga based on Red and Blue, but I do want to return to it at some point. The manga is a little edgy, but I thought it was a fun read as a kid. If any of you guys know how the manga's going these days, let me know. I'm very interested to get back into it since I could always use more books to read. I do remember that they usually have 2 main characters of the arc bounce off one another in some way, which is very cool. I saved this little quest line as a secret and Easter egg because it's not mandatory, but I do want to talk about it because I think it's very interesting and very heartbreaking to see. So there's this quest in Anastar City where an old man who has one last request to relax with a level 5 Pokemon or under. Because he's a lonely man, on occasional visits, he'll tell you about all the fun he's having with his new friend. However, a couple of days later, you can come back to a note thanking you for your compassion. Let me read it to you all. Dear Charlene, thanks to the kindness you and your Eevee showed me, I was able to keep smiling until the very end. I apologize that I can't look after Eevee anymore, but I know that you'll take care of it. Finally, please take this Comet Shard as a token of my thanks. This quest was always something I appreciate, even though a man finally passes on after his wife had left the world a good time ago. We got to fulfill this man's one last request to give him company to help him smile once more. These are the types of quests I appreciate within my RPGs, aside from, of course, saving the world, is simply just helping people on the wayside, just offering a genuine hand. So this is another game that I've gotten talked about from one of the chapters in my life. I'd like to also express interest and ask what kind of topics would y'all be interested in. Earlier in this video, I've mentioned Fire Emblem, and believe it or not, I have shown a large interest in Fire Emblem to the point that I have 2 unfinished scripts from 2 different Fire Emblem games. Let me know if you'd like to be interested in what I've had to say about them. They were the scripts on Genealogy of the Holy War, a game that I very much like and hope gets a remake in the future. To engage with and how I wasn't really thrilled with it. I can also take a secret third path and go right about how Awakening got me trenched deep into this series to the point where I have played all but one game I will say I do want to tease my next project at the end of the video, so be sure to stick around. I also think having your friends nickname you is kind of cool. However, they shouldn't let me choose my nickname for my character because I'll be honest, I think it's weird to give yourself a nickname for your friends to call you. And at that point, it's more of a preferred name, so maybe a small nitpick to reword because not everyone goes by the first names in real life. Some people just have preferred names. Nicknames are basically titles you've earned for better or for worse. Unfortunately, because I played soccer in my youth, I was called Chaser. Unfortunately, with how society evolves and makes terms for certain topics, I now wish I never played youth soccer as a kid. Anyways, I asked my friends who are very, very silly to give me a nickname. Thank you, Seth. Teenagers in the game now call me Dracula Flo whenever they show up. And thank you, Jess, for giving my female character Charlene the name Tater Tot. It's cute. So I'm going to switch to a more serious change in tone. I like to show my appreciation for this in black and white for building the path towards the stories of Pokemon becoming more mature and less afraid to tackle those serious topics, which I really do admire about the really good Pokemon stories. Taking the time to branch out from a story about coming of age to tackle serious subjects like they did with their more recent games after this. I think as Game Freak goes on, they become better at writing these stories, and in between the shenanigans they tell us stories that tackle the topics they cover with grace. This is something I wish I could cover if I ever talk about Sun and Moon, which is a Pokemon game story that I really like. But this will also be a point for another upcoming future video that I plan to make within the future, so keep an eye out on that. I'll elaborate further on a later date. No set date, but please take a minute to have some patience and stay tuned for my upcoming projects. I'm excited to share more. Yeah, just a little teaser, which may be after ZA in my next project. We'll see how it all goes. I have a planned schedule of how I make videos with these real-life duties of mine and put all this effort into my videos. Now let's talk about this top title that I gave this video. I call this generation of Pokemon the potential generation. Not in a completely derogatory way, but in a way to illustrate that there could have been so much more to this generation compared to what we got. Because if you think about it, the postgame is pretty short compared to the other generations that came before. Then you have the third legendary Zygarde, who was not finished at the time X and Y released. Much like Kyurem and Necrozma for the best examples, but unlike those two, Zygarde did not get a third game to elaborate further on its lore, unlike the other two examples. We didn't even get a signature move for Zygarde until Generation 7. At least I don't think so. I'm not very bad at remembering. I am, however, glad that this is being rectified with the announcement of Legends ZA. A decade or so late, but still appreciate it nonetheless. I kind of wish that there were more static overworld legendary Pokemon besides Zygarde and Mewtwo. There's a Sea Spirit Cave for the legendary bird that would appear there that depends on your starter. But it feels like a legendary encounter for something more fitting was supposed to be here, but was cut due to time constraints. In favor of just having a more reasonable place to catch one of the legendary birds, if you want to call that reasonable. It's very odd that half of the legendaries in this game are Kanto, which when you think about it is weird, huh? I guess that's another reason why I call it the potential game, if I'm being quite honest. I don't think some of the mythicals need to be mythicals. Like, I think Diancie and Hoopa could have been much more interesting as post-game legendary encounters. Again, I think that could be fixed through Legends ZA, considering that the mythicals of Sinnoh could be caught through no really special means aside from side quests in Legends Arceus, which I thought was much more interesting as a concept compared to just getting them from the mystery gift. I'd also like to know what's connected to the Kalos Land mass, because we don't really see what's past right here on the map. I would use my previous excuse again, but Legends once again takes place entirely within Lumiose City. There was a theory that it's Paldea, but I'm not sure if that really applies at the moment. Another topic that I've thought about is how do Megastones form? I actually do not understand them fully. I've talked to a few NPCs throughout the game, but I don't think any of them told me how these are formed because with artificial Pokemon like Mewtwo, this especially makes me think, how do you create Megastones? How are more discovered? I hope the Revisit the Kalos also answers this. I have remembered that a meteorite is the reason Mega Rayquaza exists, so how do new ones come to be? Are they from outer space? But I also know that from playing the game that they seem to be possibly irradiate evolution stones from when the ultimate weapon fired. This could be our most possible and conclusive answer, or perhaps there's many more ways to create megastones. We'll see. This is the type of lore that intrigues me, as I like to be really immersed into my RPGs and trying to gain more info from the game itself to teach me about the world I am immersed in. Another thing I'll mention is that they kind of offer too many gifts. I think offering gifts to the player is nice every once in a while, but if you took every gift Pokemon that's offered to you, you would have a party of 4 gift Pokemon, with the last 2 ones you have to fill in yourself. I think this kind of goes against the theme of catching most of your Pokemon. I think a main game should offer at least 2 or 3 Pokemon just to keep the player more interested in engaging with the game's core mechanics. I recognize that this is in fact just a nitpick of mine, and you don't have to accept these gift Pokemon. But look at me directly in my eyes and say I'm wrong, or at least require trades for some of these. With all that said, thank you all for staying for this insanely long video. I hope you all enjoyed what I had to say about the game. Please like, subscribe, and comment. I am eager to read all the feedback left below in the comments. As always, maybe I won't cover a game with multiple versions that intrigue me. Maybe. God, I hope not. I need to do more simple videos. Maybe something shorter. Maybe something with one version. Oh yeah, I am absolutely going to do some ZA coverage, including a non-spoiler thoughts video, specifically the Switch 2 version. And with that bit of news, I bid you all adieu. Until next time, when I yap about media I have interest in. Goodbye, everyone.